Hi, my name is Erin Bretz, and in this presentation, I'm going to go over my project for ICOM 495, the Capstone course. So for this report, I'm going to go into what my final project was, the process of developing the project, and the final project findings. So the first part of this is my project overview. For this project, I wanted to focus on the use of mobile apps in museums. Smartphone apps created for and by museums are becoming more and more ubiquitous nowadays, and people at museums are using them to engage with visitors. And more museum professionals, because of this, are trying to figure out what really makes a good museum app so they can continue making good digital content for their museums. So for my project, I've been conducting a case study that evaluates existing mobile museum apps. During this case study, I have users evaluate the effectiveness of each app's design and usability, and from these tests, I gather feedback about what users like to see in an app design and what about the design makes it easy and enjoyable to use. So for this case study, I have three overarching objectives. One is to evaluate the usability of three museum mobile apps. Two is to evaluate the design of these apps. And three is, from this evaluation, to develop a list of some of the best design principles and features included in museum apps. The audience for my study includes the people and groups that I could use as usability testers. Because the demographic that largely uses smartphones is in their late teens and early 20s, this is also the demographic that I've focused on, so all of the testers are Ball State University students between the ages of 19 and 25. There were a number of clubs and groups on campus that I could pull testers from, including David Owsley Museum of Art docents, a couple of immersive learning students who helped create an app for the museum last semester, and a couple of Ball State Digital Core student employees. So the requirements that I created for this capstone case study are the guidelines of what I wanted to build. I developed requirements by exploring some of their case studies and taking formatting ideas. So all case studies, of course, have a subject that they want to study and a way to gather data about a question they have about this subject, and an in-depth evaluation of the data that they get back from their tests. So from this, I developed a list of what I would need for my specific project. I obviously wanted to test museum apps, so I would need to choose at least 3 apps to evaluate. In order to evaluate, I would need to have face-to-face interviews with at least 10 users about each app. During these interviews, survey questions would be asked, and during this survey, questions acquiring data on tester demographics would need to be asked. So whether or not they've used museum mobile apps, what their age are, what their academic background is, and how familiar they are with iOS, because all of the apps were for iPhone. And then after this survey, I would have to take the feedback data and evaluate or use it to evaluate which central design features and principles users value the most. So for this first requirement, of course, I had to choose apps. So I chose, in order here from left to right, Art Lens from the Cleveland Museum of Art, Independence from the Independence National Historic Park in Pennsylvania, and Explorer, an app from the American Museum of Natural History. So all three of these apps represent much different institutions. So you've got an art museum, a natural history museum, and a national historic site. And all of these apps have some different design features, but they also all have 3 main features that I could use in a test in order to compare the 3 apps. So the next step in my process was to decide on what methodology I wanted to try and use to gather data about these apps for my study, and I went through 3 different inquiries to determine what course I should take. The first one was to find the best survey methodology, so whether or not people would like to conduct the app evaluation on a online survey that they could fill out themselves, a face-to-face interview, or a focus group setting. And from feedback that I got from people, most people thought that a face-to-face interview would be most convenient. The second inquiry that I conducted was to determine the best kinds of questions to ask during the survey, and then the third was to develop a final survey that would yield to my case study outcomes. So the first survey that I built was to have users test usability based on usability heuristics. And while it did give me some good usability feedback, it wasn't structured for telling me what people liked about the design and features and why they liked those features. So this final survey was more in line with my intended outcomes of the study. So to test for design, I had them evaluate the aesthetics by telling me their first impressions of the design. I had people evaluate usability by having them test common functions in each app and then ranking which app had the best function. And then I test for best features by asking them what they thought the best features were in each app. So in order to conduct this study, I compiled this survey on a Google form. So when I sat down with people, I had them enter in the demographic information, and then I asked them questions and recorded their feedback, which gave me a really nice spreadsheet that I could pull all my data into. And from that, I then was able to see overarching themes and really get good feedback. So the first question I asked was what people thought about the design, and this gave me insight into the fact that users valued simplicity and visually appealing graphics, and they liked these kinds of elements because it really drew them into the app and made it seem inviting. Then I tested the three main features common in all three apps, which included map features, tour features, which were organized around categories and themes, and then the exhibit and display guides in each app, which were breakout pages that described specific sites and artwork and displays. So testers were asked to use each of these features in each app and then rank which app had the best version of that feature and why. And their explanations for what they picked helped me figure out what people liked and didn't like in terms of usability. So from this evaluation, I created different graphs that helped me visualize the data. And then the third part of my survey was to ask what their favorite feature were in each app. And once I graphed out the data, I could see some overlap between three apps of what people liked. People really liked tours, they valued good design. There was also some interesting outliers. Some features that I did not test, such as the maps and tours, included in Independence. There was a children's activities section that all of my testers, while being over the age of 20, thought was really interesting. People really also liked the amenities guides in each app that told where the restrooms were and where the food were. So this gave me a really good picture of what people liked out of each app overall. And so after this kind of data visualization, I went in and did a data analysis, and I compiled that all into a central findings report. So what I got back for each of my three outcomes: design, usability, and best features. And from this text version, I created a Prezi presentation that dynamically moves through each part of my survey. So at first you get to see my case study objectives, then my the methodology that I use, the demographics. Let's go back to that. Demographics with the graph of what age my testers were. And then I went into the 3 different apps themselves. So I took a look at ArtLens, what features were in each app. So Independence, Explorer, I included screenshots and some video about the apps being used. And then I go into my first objective, so different features and the design of different features, the maps, the tours, and the guides. So I then took those graphs that I showed earlier and put them in, along with an overview of why people liked maps and the usability feedback that I got for maps, and then tours, and then also guides. And then I went into my third objective for the case study, which is app design. This was an overview of what people liked in design overall. Then it's broken down by what people liked of the design of ArtLens, what people liked in Independence, what people liked in Explorer. Explorer was an interesting case because halfway through this case study, it went through an update. So the design really changed drastically. So I had some people evaluate with the old design and with the new. People seemed to like the new design more. It was more graphically appealing, had better pictures, better use of text and font, and had a minimalist design that people were really attracted to. So the third part of this case study was best features. So I had people, of course, rank their best features in each app. And then I kind of did a breakdown of the top 3 favorite features in each app. And then after all is said and done, what's the takeaway? What did I find out during my case study? So in line with my original objectives, I found that what people like in design are simple, intuitive interfaces that use recognizable icons and good colors and font that are easy on the eyes. In terms of usability, people like clear labels and icons and menus that keep navigation simple. Users like to be able to easily access and explore app content. In terms of features, make it interesting. They liked theme tours that they could use to find content that they really personally had an interest in. Also show users where they can find the amenities. People thought that it was really convenient that they could locate exits and restrooms and food and hours of operation. Also map it out. People really appreciated the map features in each app, and they liked them because it helped them orient themselves within the museum and plan their visit. And also have fun. Users liked apps that had extra content, that offered multimedia and fun facts that allowed increased interaction and increased exploration. Also keep in mind some interesting things that came out of this study was that personal preference for content can influence a user's opinion of an app. So if they like an art museum more than a historic museum, that kind of weighed in on which app they thought was best. So overall, those outcomes are in line with my case study objectives. I definitely learned a lot during this process. I was able to really do some good research within the study and the field of museum apps, which is a growing field. And I was able to keep in line with my objectives throughout the case study. And I learned a lot about the process of conducting a case study and having clear goals and creating an evaluation that would yield really meaningful feedback and results for this study. So with that, that is the end of my ICOM 495 capstone case study project.